All right, everybody, this is my son, Hugh Hefner. All right, Aidan, tell everybody what we're going to be doing tonight.
We're gonna fix the gears on my Traxxas Rustler.
Okay, and how old is it about? How long have you had it?
Couple weeks.
A couple of weeks, and it stopped working. Does it move at all?
No.
No, but the motor runs, right?
Yeah.
So we figure that some gears lost some teeth?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think that happened?
Um,
Brand new, it's only 2 weeks old, so what would be your guess?
I've been using incorrectly.
Would you say that maybe you've been abusing it?
Yes.
Okay. And this is what? This is called Traxxas
Rustler.
Rustler, okay? And it's a pretty cool car. It goes pretty fast, right? Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. All right, and what are we hoping? You're hoping that the gears that are broken are right under this cover here?
Yeah.
Because why? Why are you hoping it's those gears?
Because they're plastic.
I know, but why are you hoping that those are the gears?
Because we have extra ones.
Because we have extra ones. So when we got the car, it came with an extra set, an extra pinion, and an extra big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is there a second set of gears? What are these gears?
For on-road.
On-road. So what do you think's different about these gears from the ones that are in there?
That one's much smaller.
Okay. And if this one's much smaller,
that's gonna make the bigger one spin faster.
Well, actually, this is a good learning opportunity right here. We can tell by the size of the cover here that since the motor's right here, the motor shaft goes right through here, right? So is the small gear on the motor shaft, or is the big gear on the motor shaft?
Small gear.
The small gear. So the small gear is on the motor shaft, right? And the big gear is being driven.
Yes.
So this is the driving gear and this is the driven gear.
Yes.
Okay? So the size of one gear to the other gear is called the gear ratio.
Yeah.
Okay? So when we change these two gears in here with these two gears, we're changing the gear ratio. All right? So think about what you said. You think that this gear is smaller than the one that's in there. Okay?
Might be bigger.
Well, I think it's going to be bigger, and I'll tell you why. Because if you think about it, all right, consider this. When this gear turns around once, okay, when this gear turns around once, this gear doesn't turn around one time, right? It turns around
a little bit.
Part of the way, right? All right. And if we had an imaginary circle around the outside of this gear, okay, and we cut that circle and had a piece of, let's say that circle was made out of a piece of string, and we cut that piece of string, we cut that circle so we just had a length of string. But the length of the string would be exactly the length to go around the whole outside of the circle, what we call the circumference of the circle. Got it? Okay? If we put that length down on the table and we measured it, okay? And then we did the same thing here. We put a big piece of string around here, and we cut it, and we put it out. Of course, this is going to be a much longer piece of string, right? So the length of this string to the length of the big string, there's a ratio, okay? When you think about it, you would have to move the length of this short string a few times before you equaled the length of the big string. So moving that length of that short string, one full length, is basically it's one revolution of the small gear. Okay? So you'd have to do several revolutions of the small gear before you got one revolution of the big gear. All right? So this is actually taking the very fast RPMs of the motor, okay, and transferring it through the small gear into the big gear, which results in the big gear spinning slower than the RPMs of the motor.
Like a transmission.
Right. And the reason why we want to slow, what do we gain by slowing it
Horsepower.
down?
Horsepower.
Right. Power, more torque. Okay? Because if they just had like a 1-to-1 ratio, if both of these gears were the same size, then this transmission would be spinning at the same speed as the motor. And theoretically, it would go really, really fast. The problem is it wouldn't have any power. So it would have trouble getting the car to accelerate. And we want the car to be able to accelerate. You want it to be able to spin the wheels and, right, go crazy, right? So the smaller this gear gets, the larger this gear has to get. And the more times this has to spin before this goes around one revolution. Okay? So we want, for off-road, we want it to go slower with more power.
Mm-hmm.
For on-road, we want it to go faster. In order for it to go faster, I would say that this gear has to get larger. And if this gear is going to get larger, this gear is going to have to get smaller. Why? Because the two shafts that these are mounted on, this is mounted on the motor, and this is mounted on another shaft inside there, right? Yeah. They're a certain distance apart, and we can't change that distance. Okay, so we have to have one gear get smaller if the other gear gets larger, and vice versa. So my bet is going to be, since these are the road gears, my bet is going to be that A, the gear that's in here right now is smaller, the one on the motor is smaller than this, and B, that the gear that is in here, okay, is going to be larger than this. All right. And C, that this car will go faster with these gears in there. And B, that you will continue to use this off-road with these gears in here and shred these gears in a short amount of time, thus having us make another video when we install the Metal Gear set that you'll eventually be able to afford with your birthday money in about a month or so, right? Mm. Hey, all right.
More subscribers.
All right, so go ahead. Do your magic. Why don't we turn it around like this so all the people at home can follow along with the carnage. All right. And I've got some jeweler's screwdrivers here, but you might even be able to use this one on those screws. I like how they hide the screws in there to make it interesting. Now, be extra careful. If that screw rolls off the bench onto the floor, we're going to end up having to spend 10 minutes looking for it, or longer. So go ahead and put your screw over here. Do you need the shorter screwdriver maybe? Would that be better?
I can get it with this.
All right, well, you're coming in at an angle there. If it was really tight, it might want to strip the screw head, so. I'd give you more light, but your head is kind of blocking the way there. Look at that, 2 screws and the whole cover comes off?
Yes.
That's, how does that even seal well enough to keep water and dirt from getting in there? That's amazing that they only bothered putting 2. Wow. Yeah, see how much smaller that gear is on the motor?
Mm-hmm.
A lot smaller. Oh, we're going to need some kind of a nut driver. There is looks like a self-locking nut on there.
I have one upstairs.
What?
One that fits this.
You do?
Yeah, it's the one that came with them.
Yeah, no, we're going to use one of my nut drivers. It'd be better. All right, so I was just looking at this to see what kind of damage was done to the gears, and I was rotating this and realized that it's not meshing at all with the pinion gear. Okay, you can see that. It's barely meshing. That's what that grinding noise we were hearing was. But the pinion gear doesn't have any damaged teeth. In fact, this pinion gear is metal. So the off-road pinion gear is metal, as opposed to the plastic one that comes with it for the on-road. So what's happened, we think that this motor has moved out of position. And if that's the case, then it means maybe it just wasn't tightened correctly at the factory, or tight enough at the factory. And maybe you didn't actually ruin this. It just decided to loosen up and move on its own. That'd be nice. Right? For once you could say you didn't break it. So I think what you're going to have to do Oh yeah, look at that. I just moved it. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Watch. So what they've got is they got like an elongated hole here. There we go. So my suggestion is we just try and tighten that screw and see what happens. Why don't you let me try and tighten it? Because if you
Have it the one on the bottom too.
that's the one. That's actually the one. It's almost pivoting on this one. This one hardly moved. Oh, look how loose that is. Oh wow. I'll tell you what.
But
I got another recommendation for us. I have some stuff that I can put on the threads. And what it is it acts like a glue. And when we put it on the threads and we screw the screw in, it'll set up and it'll keep the screw from loosening. But it's not so strong that we can't get it out if we have to. So I would suggest maybe we think about putting that on there.
yeah, let's try.
Because this screw, obviously, from vibration, just must have come loose. Because that's wicked loose.
But we have to take this off.
That
too.
a bottom one is too. Well, yeah, because see how the screw heads are.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? We move this out far enough, I bet you they pop out. What are you doing? Don't break the thing. Don't break my stuff, or else I won't invite you down here anymore. My magic layer. You know what? I really don't want to take this this gear off if we don't have to. Do you know why?
The clutch.
All right, so I'm trying to avoid taking this gear off because I noticed that there's a self-locking nut right here that screws down onto this shaft and is compressing a spring. So this must be some sort of a slip clutch arrangement. And my fear is that I'm not going to know exactly how much to tighten this down or how far. If we were going to take this off, I would probably actually measure how far from the end of the screw this is in, and when we put it back together, I put it on exactly the same amount. That's how I would end up doing it. But if we can avoid that, we'll avoid it. All right, so this stuff is called Permatex Thread Blocker Blue, and it's a copy of another product that's very famous called Loctite. There's a company called I forget what the name of the company is, but they have a product called Loctite, and I think they might have been the inventors. And this is like a knockoff of it. Okay. But it works the same way. You put some on the threads, you screw it together before it sets up, and then once it sets up, it's pretty strong. This says, if you notice, it says medium strength. That means that this can be broken free with mechanical force. Okay, as opposed to there's red, thread locker red, or Loctite red. That stuff, when you put it on the threads and you screw it together, it's not coming apart again unless you apply heat. So like you would use that on bolts on like certain automobile or truck, motorcycle type applications. And then if we wanted to take those apart, we'd actually have to take a torch to it and put heat to it. If we took a torch to this, it would obviously
Melt the whole thing.
Yes, it would melt the whole thing. Which, I don't know about you, but I think
I
we
don't
should
want
try and
that.
avoid that. So, all right. So I shake this stuff up to mix it, because that's what the instructions say to do. And then what I do is, I'm going to tilt this like this, so that I can actually just flow a drop of this stuff right onto the threads of that screw, thereby avoiding the entire hassle of trying to get that screw out. Okay.
You can put any one of those.
I think you're right. I don't think it makes a difference, but I would like to try and orient it the same way it was roughly. I think that was facing, the 12 turn thing was facing up, if I recall correctly. Now, is that other hole lined up? It is, somewhat. Okay. Hold on, let me finish tightening this one.
Try to use this.
These are very small screws, so I don't want to put too much force on them, because what'll happen?
It'll strip.
It'll strip. It'll rip the threads right out. We don't need a lot of force on these. All right. So there's one. I'd like a little bit of clearance between the teeth. We don't want it too tight. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You put it in too tight.
I'm backing it out right now. There we go. There we go. That seems about right.
Can you put it on these too? Can we just put them in?
Those are the cover screws.
Yeah.
No, that's not necessary. Those weren't loose. They're not subjected to the same kind of vibration. Yeah, you want to use the short screwdriver because the tire's in the way. We could have taken the wheel off if we wanted to have had better clearance in retrospect. I like that these tires are so spongy. I can actually push the tire out of the way.
I don't like how they're bald.
Well, that's because you're ripping out on the road.
Doing wheelies on the road.
Doing wheelies. All right, what do you think? Put the case on and caissons go marching on. What? Dust?
Yeah.
Hand me that old toothbrush to the left there.
Right here?
Yeah. Brush it out over the trash. Now I know why there isn't any grease on those gears.
Why?
Because this cover does nothing to keep dirt from getting in there. And if there was grease on those gears, the dust would stick to the grease, and it would make a big mess in there.
Then why is this here?
Was what
Cap
there?
so you can take that out.
What cap?
Right here.
That cap comes off?
Yeah.
Oh. That's so you can put a nut driver in there and adjust that nut. If you tighten that nut, it will put more force on that spring, and it'll tighten the clutch up. If you loosen the nut, it'll allow the clutch to slip more. There might be applications where you might want it to slip more, and there might be applications where you want it to not slip at all. I'm surprised there isn't something in your owner's manual about that.
I read it online. Had to adjust
why
it.
didn't you read your owner's manual that came with it?
I don't know if it says anything about that.
Hey, here, you know how you might be able to tell if it says anything?
What?
Guess what I'm thinking you should do?
Read it.
Yeah, read it. That might work.
I read it 24/7 sometimes.
No. Like, if you don't know if it says anything about it, then you obviously didn't read all of it. Because if you read everything in it, you should be able to say with some confidence, I don't remember reading anything about that in the owner's manual.
There we go. If I put them in, they're just gonna keep on spinning, but not.
They thread into the plastic. Yeah, they strip real easily. All right, that's it. You're gonna have to wait till tomorrow during the day to test it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that that's probably gonna be a successful repair. I'm pretty impressed.
I didn't break it.
No, I was about to say I was impressed with myself. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Tell everybody to subscribe.
I can't say it anymore.
Just say, hey, if you like our videos, please subscribe to my dad's channel. Say it like that.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to my dad's videos.
Subscribe.
Whatever he said.
Nice try.